quite a lot of what I've been doing so far is trying to sort of ease us gently into a new perspective on causality and the role of humans in the universe. So I've sort of touched on evidence from different places. So I just want to go through a few of the sources that I've used, some of the books. Let me start with this one. Right, so Jane Roberts, The Individual and the Nature of Mass Events, a Seth book. So there were many Seth books. I think I talked about them before, maybe not. Anyway, I'll talk about them again later. But I just want to read this. So, more and more, the quality of your lives is formed through the subjective realities of your feelings and mental constructions. Again, beliefs that foster despair are biologically destructive. They cause the physical system to shut down. If mass action against appalling social or political conditions is not effective, then other means are taken. And these are often in the guise of epidemics or natural disasters. The blight is wiped out in one way or another. So you can understand this perspective is actually fairly frequently referenced today because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So this perspective is that humans played a causal role in creating this pandemic, not in the sense that, it was created in some laboratory by mistake, but in the sort of direct relationship with nature sense. And that's what that whole series of books is talking about. Okay, other books that are maybe along those lines? Well, let me introduce this one. I haven't actually talked about this one yet. Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. So this is like a series of, I guess, channeled writing, and it's like a conversation between Neale Donald Walsch and God. So I really, really like it, because it sort of widens your perspective on how things work. Again, it gives a fairly causal role to humanity, that we basically create what comes to us in our lives. So there's lots and lots of things. This is book 2, but there were actually book 1, book 2, book 3, and then there were many other books following that too in this whole series. But these books very much emphasize that what we think and expect, we create. And basically I like it because, so much of that is really seems just really true to me. I don't agree with everything in those books, but I think on the whole God gets it right. Okay, so let's see. Then there's another one which I have maybe talked about, Blackfoot Physics by F. David Peat. So this is different because this is talking about how Native Americans related to the natural world. Right, remember I talked about the story of the Rainmaker? I can read you just a little bit of this too. I was drawn to the subtlety of the indigenous approach to knowing and being, and as a physicist I became impressed by its ideas of time, causality, and reality, its view of number, its interest in astronomical observations, and its painstaking attention to the details of the natural world. Above all, I was struck by the way in which all aspects of life are based on relationship and renewal, upon the balance of heart and head, upon the courtesies and dignities of daily life, upon harmony and balance, and upon the acknowledgement of the powers that animate the world around us. So the indigenous way of life recognizes the sort of internal aspect of nature and relates directly to the powers or the spirits or something that is deeper than just the external form of the organisms in nature. So, and also very much responds to the synchronicities within nature. So you see, so if you're living as an indigenous person, then you're in constant communication with nature, and that is a real communication. So that is very important. And then I have talked a little bit about this idea of process philosophy. I'm showing you a book called Process Theology, because process philosophy was actually by Alfred North Whitehead, but his book is actually a little hard to read. So this is a much easier introduction to it. So even though it's called theology, you can just miss out some of the more theological aspects if you want. But it does touch on a couple of things. So one thing is the whole idea of the mother, that God is more like affected directly by the reality of the situation of humanity and by also the natural world. And then it also talks about, instead of focusing on the material aspect of matter, there is no material aspect as such, but it's really, everything is like a droplet of experience, almost like a droplet of consciousness. So that allows us to relate more directly between human consciousness and the consciousness of the material world. And there are several books that actually address that. So one would be Biocentrism. This is by Robert Lanza, MD. He's highly respected. So this is, he says, how life and consciousness are the keys to understanding the true nature of the universe. So again, he emphasizes the consciousness is underlying everything, right? So this is a really good book to read for that reason. I haven't got a specifically Jungian book with me, but I will, well, I've talked about Cosmos and Psyche before, of course. Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. He really examines the whole idea of synchronicities, which came from Carl Jung, and the sort of unity of opposites, and the aspect of meaning that is inherent in everything in the universe. So that's a really, really important book, and I'm definitely going to talk much more about some of the things that he addresses in that. But where I am going fairly soon is more in this direction: mind, matter, and quantum mechanics. So I really want to look at the science behind it all. I want to see if there's a way that we can understand 20th century science that incorporates some of these insights, so synchronicities of our direct relationship with nature. Okay, I really want to have a look at what science says about that. So it used to be that everything was focused on the collapse of the wave function due to an observation, but that didn't necessarily really solve the problem at all. It didn't really give any insights. So, but in the last 20 or 30 years, the whole field of trying to understand what's really going on in quantum mechanics has totally opened up. So it used to be that you pretty much couldn't get a job if you were interested in trying to understand the quantum world. But now it's changed, right? So I really want to look at that. Another book I'm just going to introduce briefly because it's a very good book is The Big Picture of Life. Carter Mapes or Mapes, Mark Pitstick and Gary Schwartz. So this is actually like a somewhat scientific introduction to what they see as the afterlife. So again, it's not really the same thing. It's not really directly addressing consciousness, which is the route that I've chosen to come at this, but it is more like an experimental approach. So this is very good. It's written actually for young people. I would say maybe from about the age of 8 or 9 to young adults even. There's a lot of really good insights in it. and it's warning us of an imminent change. So it's actually a really good book to have a look at. So anyway, that's what I'm going to talk about today, and I'll talk about something else later.